In the annals of my life, there exists a chapter drenched in the hues of retail, a world where the cast of characters swung between the delightful and the despicable. These were the days when retail's underbelly revealed the full spectrum of human behavior, leaving indelible marks on my memory. But among the countless anecdotes of exasperating encounters, one chapter stands as an extraordinary tale of sweet revenge. My journey in the retail realm was just a year old, and I was beginning to find my footing in this newly minted store. As an introverted soul who abhorred confrontations, I sought solace in the smiles of the kind-hearted customers. However, one particular customer shone as a beacon of warmth in this often chilly retail world, an endearing elderly lady who never failed to brighten my day with her cheerful conversations. Weeks passed without sight of her, until one fateful morning when her car glided into the disabled parking bay. She, a holder of the coveted blue badge, now stepped out of her vehicle, navigating her way with crutches and a cast on her leg. Before I could approach her to inquire about her well-being, a robust works truck, conspicuously bereft of a blue disabled badge, brazenly occupied the adjacent disabled parking spot. Out of it leaped a strapping builder in his 40s, accompanied by his teenage offspring. The old lady, apparently in possession of metaphorical balls of steel, found her voice and politely confronted this ignorant intruder, pointing out the inappropriateness of his parking. Her logic was sound: this space was reserved for the disabled, and he lacked the requisite badge. What happened next was etched into my memory with an iron stylus. The builder, instead of acknowledging his mistake, chose the path of humiliation and insult. He subjected the elderly lady, vulnerable on crutches, to the cruel theatrics of an amateur detective. He accused her of feigning her disability, scoffing at the authenticity of her leg cast and suggesting she was milking the benefit system. With a theatrical limp, he sauntered away, leaving the old lady in shocked silence. I, regrettably, remained a passive witness to this injustice, my courage faltering in the face of confrontation. A feeble attempt to involve the manager yielded no results, for they appeared disinterested in the plight of this defenseless lady. Over the years, I continued my tenure at the store, a silent observer of the scum builder's comings and goings. Fate mercifully spared me from direct interaction with this antagonist, yet his presence was a persistent reminder of his past transgressions. His audacity extended to repeated illegal parking in the disabled bays. Soon, I could recognize him not only by his odious behavior but also by the sizable blue Mercedes he drove. It was 7 years later that fortune favored our store with a powerful weapon, a digital parking enforcement system. No longer would external parties issue fines; it was our privilege and duty to wield the ticketing machine. My mission was clear, and my heart raced with anticipation. 3 parking rules dictated our actions, each violation incurring an £80 fine. First, the most sacred of all, no parking in disabled spaces without a badge. The scum builder's blatant disregard for this rule was my beacon, and it didn't take long for me to spot him. Swiftly, I approached, capturing his oversized blue Mercedes in the nearest disabled bay with no badge to its name. I meticulously recorded his details and fired off the report, setting in motion the wheels of his impending fines. But retribution wasn't a one-time affair. The bureaucratic process afforded me the luxury of continuous ticketing as weeks passed before they received their first fine notice. As expected, the scum persisted in parking illegally, and with my post at the store's entrance, I was always poised to strike. Dozens of fines later, the scum builder relented, and his Mercedes ceased to invade the disabled bays. Yet, his penchant for mischief endured. Rule number 2 became his next nemesis: no parking in child spaces without a child. I had memorized his car details, and with glee, I issued fines as he occupied these scarce spots, complete with empty child seats. The routine continued for weeks, and finally, the fines started arriving. My discreet nature shielded me from discovery, leaving the scum seething in silent frustration. But all good things, even the pursuit of justice, must come to an end. The scum's car no longer lurked in the child parking or the disabled bays. Had he finally seen the error of his ways? A quick investigation revealed he hadn't. Rule number 3 presented the final battleground: park within marked bays. The scum, true to his character, still managed to breach this rule, often straddling lines or encroaching into multiple spaces. His relentless disregard led to more fines, from parking in taxi zones to leaving a single wheel astray over a bay's wide line. Weeks rolled on, and the scum exhausted his repertoire of parking misdeeds. Our company brought in external enforcers, and my beloved ticketing machine was retired. Skeptics may argue the unenforceability of these fines, but I remained untroubled for 3 reasons. Firstly, I was paid to exact this vengeance, ensuring that neither my time nor money was wasted. Secondly, the fines had an effect, forcing the scum to amend his parking habits. And thirdly, even if he never paid a single fine, the Herculean task of contesting them and the perpetual deluge of mail would surely exact its toll. In total, the scum builder accumulated thousands of pounds in fines over the years. As the cherry on the cake, 3 years later, I walked by this remorseless transgressor in the parking lot, watching him berate an innocent soul in a high-visibility jacket, falsely accusing them of being the parking fines tormentor. Peace washed over me, knowing that my silent vengeance had left an indelible mark on him, a scar of infuriation that persisted long after my mission concluded.
I was employed by a company specializing in complex manufacturing equipment. To maintain my anonymity, I'll provide only a broad description of the machinery's purpose. My role often involved liaising with clients, assisting in equipment installations, and providing maintenance services. One particular client, let's call him Jake, had become a familiar name in my client list. Even after I transitioned to a different job, Jake had managed to keep my contact information. One sunny afternoon, I received a call from Jake, who urgently needed a new unit installed and maintenance performed on another. He inquired if I were available. I responded, explaining my departure from the company but offering to connect him with a colleague who could assist. However, Jake had a tempting proposition. He was willing to pay double my former rate for a weekend installation. Jake went on to explain that the company had recently raised their installation charges to an exorbitant level, which was beyond their budget. Additionally, the instructions provided by the manufacturer had proven to be convoluted, leaving their engineers baffled. His appeal was persuasive, and I reluctantly agreed to help. To provide some context, installing this specific unit was a laborious task, often taking several hours or even an entire day, especially when tackled by a lone technician. The manufacturer offered 2 installation options. The customer could pay for an engineer to handle the installation, or opt for a cost-saving approach where the manufacturer would send detailed instructions for the customer's engineers to follow. However, these instructions were notoriously complex, and once the customer initiated the installation process, the manufacturer's involvement ceased, rendering any equipment issues the customer's responsibility. I drove down that weekend, ready to tackle the job. Jake introduced me to the equipment, and I made swift progress with the installation. 6 hours into the task, Jake approached me with a message I hadn't anticipated. He regretfully explained that they couldn't afford to pay me, and he believed his in-house engineers could handle the remaining work. To say I was infuriated would be an understatement. My sense of justice spurred a desire for revenge. Within the unit, there was a concealed button that initiated test mode. While this mode was essential for maintenance purposes, it effectively prevented configuring the unit for regular operation. Operating this button required a specific tool, ensuring it wasn't inadvertently pressed during installation. However, the instructions provided for installation made no mention of it, as its use was primarily for maintenance, not installation. Moreover, there was no visual indicator to indicate that the equipment had been placed into test mode. It simply wouldn't function as expected. I believe you can see where this is going. I pressed the button covertly, packed my belongings, and left the site. On Monday, Jake called me repeatedly, only to have his calls unanswered. I knew my former company wouldn't step in since the installation process had already begun. Besides, I was aware that his engineers wouldn't be able to discern the issue. All I had to do was let him stew. Several days passed, and amidst the numerous unanswered calls, I eventually picked up. Jake's fury was palpable. He demanded to know where I had disappeared and why I hadn't answered his calls. When he admitted they were unable to configure the machine and needed my expertise, I retorted, "Why should this be my problem? You refused to pay me. He offered an apology and suggested they would find a way to compensate me if I could arrive as soon as possible. I wasn't about to be swayed. I responded, "Oh no. You'll need to transfer £7,000 up front before I take any action." It was a moment of immense empowerment. Jake erupted in frustration, engaged in a heated exchange, and eventually hung up. A day later, he called again, this time with a more apologetic tone. He acknowledged his previous behavior and expressed his willingness to compensate me once the task was complete. But I remained unwavering in my demand. After some negotiation, he finally agreed to the upfront payment. I watched as the funds landed in my account, and the next day, I arrived at the site. The look of bewilderment on Jake's face as I produced a simple pin to deactivate the test mode was genuinely priceless. The ensuing astonishment as I completed the configuration within a mere 20 minutes and subsequently packed my tools and departed was even more gratifying. It marked the easiest £7,000 I had ever earned. This narrative serves as a testament to the perils of underestimating a seasoned problem solver. Early in my career, I joined a small team responsible for catering to a major client. Fresh out of grad school, I was brimming with knowledge but inexperienced in the complexities of corporate politics, contract law, and hierarchical dynamics. Our task was Herculean, to prototype a solution to a highly technical problem posed by our client. I was the sole expert in the team for this particular challenge, placing the responsibility squarely on my shoulders while others handled management duties. At the project's inception, our team leader, effectively my boss, made an enticing promise. He assured me of a generous bonus worth nearly 30% of my annual salary, which was to be contributed by the client directly. It sounded great, but there was a catch: it wasn't documented in writing. Over the next 2 years, despite periodic inquiries about the promised bonus, I received nothing but verbal assurances. While I reflect that I should have been more assertive, I was, at that time, a rookie unwilling to risk alienating the client. As the third year approached, the project continued to thrive, benefiting both the client and the company. My role was irreplaceable as I possessed intimate knowledge of the project. As the company prepared to extend my contract, I posed one final question about the elusive bonus during contract negotiations. In response, my team leader claimed no knowledge of such an arrangement, emphasizing the necessity of written documentation. I had learned my lesson. However, the cruelest revelation came when I discovered that the bonus, a meager 30% of my initial salary, was now allocated to fund an intern to assist me. The client would redirect the intended bonus to cover the intern's expenses. At this point, my trust was in shambles. I was presented with a tempting offer to continue my work, which included a salary increase. But that missing bonus lingered in my mind, souring the deal. When I inquired about the bonus one last time during the contract negotiation, my boss claimed no knowledge of our prior discussions. As the realization sunk in that the missing bonus was being diverted to fund the intern's employment, I decided to take matters into my own hands. Without signing the contract, I abandoned my job and the project, leaving my company and the client in the lurch. With no prior notice, I severed all ties. I left my company phone and pager behind, along with personal belongings on my desk. I disabled my work email and messenger accounts to sever communication. I disregarded any attempts to contact me for the following months. It was a liberating and vengeful act. The satisfaction of potentially causing a major setback to the company was empowering, though I couldn't predict the far-reaching consequences of my actions. I remained uncontactable, eventually relocating to start anew in a different city. But the repercussions continued to ripple. The company lost the major client, as I had anticipated. Additional clients, feeling neglected, followed suit, leading to downsizing and a looming takeover by a competitor. My ex-boss, overwhelmed by the stress, developed a substance abuse issue, which contributed to a divorce. While guilt crept in when I heard about these outcomes, it wasn't enough to prompt an apology. My ex-boss attempted to contact me several times, but I remained steadfast in my ghosting strategy. However, the story doesn't end there. In my current workplace, where I hold a stake, I am now proposing a new iteration of the project I initiated a decade ago. I am finally in a position to bring my brainchild to fruition and possibly showcase a patent at an international conference attended by the very clients who once promised me a bonus but withheld it. This tale serves as a catharsis, revealing a dual narrative of actions taken by my former company and me. The missing bonus still gnaws at me, but perhaps this time, I'll get a chance to set things right and seize the true bonus I deserve.